The government has promised to pass the Value Added Tax Amendment Bill of 2020, which will see the reversal of VAT on all exports.
This bill seeks to amend the Value Added Tax Act, Chapter 8105, thereby reversing the imposition of VAT on exports. This bill is to reverse VAT on exports. The bill also allows for exporters to be registered for VAT and to reclaim input purchase VAT on monies expended on costs in pursuance of production with effective date October 1st, 2020. This is a significant intervention that is being made by the administration, Mr. Speaker. And this is expected to put monies back, real value money, back in the hands of people. Just for the last quarter of this year, this could cost about $630 million. Mr. Speaker, the measure to place exporters in the exempt category, rather than the current zero-rated category, will alleviate the burden of absorbing the input VAT paid on cost component relevant to the production of the export product. Currently, what obtains, because exporters such as those in fishing, rice, timber industry, among others, are in the exempt category and cannot be registered for VAT, they cannot reclaim input purchase VAT on monies expended on cost in pursuance of their production. This piece of legislation will seek to correct that. This administration intends to bring about a change by providing immediate support and stimulus to our manufacturing sector and to our exporters. Mr. Speaker, we have been making this point that even in an oil and gas economy, we have to support our traditional sectors. We don't want to have a situation where our manufacturers, agro-processors, those involved in fisheries, and perhaps at some stage we may become exporters of poultry and beef in some large scale, especially with the interventions being made in Budget 2020, where we are seeking to incentivize plantation agriculture for corn and soya. People must be able to, when they're doing business, to have a playing field that if they had to expend in the input of production, they'd be able to reclaim that at the appropriate time. So, this measure will result in a reduction in the cost of manufacturing. It will make us more competitive, and it will make manufacturing more profitable, thus encouraging more people to enter the market. We want to see expansion across the various sectors. And we know that the private sector, including the manufacturing sector, is a key area for job creation. So, Mr. Speaker, on this particular initiative, I can simply say we offer no apology for stimulating the private sector. We offer no apology. Because the jobs that we are talking about, we have to be able to see the private sector grow so that our young people could be employed, so that there could be real jobs that people are earning significant sums. And manufacturing presents such an opportunity. So the removal of this burdensome tax on exports and the reclassification that we are talking about would allow for both competition, profitability, and expansion in the manufacturing sector. Mr. Speaker, if I give an example, supposing an exporter of manufactured items exports 5 million worth of goods, and these cost about 4 million to produce. Out of this 4 million, let us assume that 1 million were non-labor inputs that included 14% VAT. Under the previous administration, this manufacturer would not be able to claim as refunds the VAT paid on those inputs. In this example, this would amount to almost $370,000 in unrecoverable costs to this small manufacturer. So this measure of removing VAT on imports, and I dealt with a $5 million export, the shipment of $5 million, whatever it is that is being produced.
When you're talking about giving back to the people, very few can argue against it. The taxman might not agree because they want to collect as much revenue as possible. But some measures that the PVP put in place in this budget can be likened to that of planting a seed, where you provide the necessary nutrients, you nurture that plant, and then you harvest. And these measures are intended to, first of all, arrest the decline in our economy, give incentives for expansion in growth and productivity, and then the taxman will be happy. It's making an investment in our country, in our economy, where you're giving these breaks to stimulate the economy to make more in the long run. The PNC saw the AP and UAFC, of course, does not understand this. And like the Honorable Nandlal said, they were not clear about what they were taxing or how they were going about taxing what they don't even know what they were taxing. The mules, for example, and well, what other thing? The bullocks. And sir, my attention was drawn to a presentation by the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Jordan, when on the 10th of January 2018, there was a debate on the Value-Added Tax Amendment Bill, Bill number 2 of 2017. And this is what the Honorable Minister had to say. And it gives an indication about how, in their desperation how they were trying to go about garnering as much revenue as possible in the absence of attracting investment that would have given real growth and in that process garner more tax for the government. So the minister said, and I quote her, "I want to say immediately that this bill has nothing to do with any new measure per se, and that most of these amendments in this bill are really consequent to the amendments that were made to the Value Added Tax Act and schedules in Budget 2017. Let me allay any fears that I did not talk about this in my speech, and that we were now introducing measures that seem to be a burden on either the consumer or other stakeholders." End of quote. Sir, I would describe this statement as a sleight of hand by the then minister, because he knew fully well what would have been the impact of these measures on our economy. And we saw it happening all over. And I recall one of the honorable members there, so I think was Holder, in his budget presentation spoke about record-breaking production in rice under the APNU administration. And I said that yes, in 2015 was a record-breaking production, but by 2019 they produced less than that they produced in 2015. If you don't sustain the economy with broad-based fiscal policy or macroeconomic policy, then your economy will falter and grind to a halt. And then the country will suffer. And then a knee-jerk reaction is to tax the people more. So 200 more plus taxes, you tax the people more, where revenue go up, and then your sector that is supposed to produce and generate wealth continues to shrink. And so, you know, coming out of World War II, the worst military conflict in the world, in our history, where about, I think, 70 to 80 million people died. In war-ravaged Europe, post-World War II, finance ministers around were trying to build back their economy. And you could understand, sir, that you're coming out of a situation where your sector is totally destroyed, infrastructure and all of that, bombed into oblivion. And so the people are trying to garner taxes to stimulate the economy. And Sir Winston Churchill had this to say at that time: "I contend that for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself." So you cannot get prosperity by taxation. And what this government is doing, the People's Progressive Party, civic government is doing, is putting into place measures that might reduce your taxes for now, but that are intended to generate more revenue in the future because of expansion in production and productivity, manufacturing and services and all of that. So this move that is being made here through Bill number 9 of 2020, the Value Added Tax Amendment Bill 2020, is a move in the right direction in keeping with measures outlined in Budget 2020.
The passage of this and the other amended bills reversing taxes implemented during the APNU-AFC's tenure will put money back into the pockets of citizens.